For the family of Nolan Wells reveals new evidence in their investigation into how he died.
His keys were on the mainland, but Nolan was left 10 miles out in the Gulf. On July 4th, an 18-year-old athlete disappears offshore. 2 days later, his body is recovered on a remote island beach. And within 24 hours, local authorities announced there was no evidence of foul play. But with digital evidence unexamined, the family's legal team is demanding answers.
How do you trust the words of people that say immediately there was no foul play when you haven't even investigated whether there was foul play? How do you trust people that come back from something that happened and never really give you a straight story of what happened, including you have the keys to the car?
Now this investigation is reaching a critical turning point. Because Horn Island is federally protected land, and members of Congress have formally called on the Department of Justice and the FBI to initiate an independent review, setting an expected 7-day response window. To understand why this case has sparked such national attention, you have to examine the geography of the Mississippi Sound. Horn Island is not an ordinary beach. It is an uninhabited, protected barrier island 10 miles off the coast, accessible only by boat. On the 4th of July, the North Shore becomes a major holiday destination, drawing hundreds of vessels onto the sandbars. Nolan Wells traveled to the island with a group to celebrate the holiday. Early afternoon accounts placed Nolan on the beach, socializing with friends. But between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m., the situation shifted dramatically. Around 4 p.m., records show a call for assistance was made regarding the boat Nolan arrived on. Reports indicated the vessel was taking on water and required commercial towing assistance to make the 10-mile journey back across the Sound to the mainland. That distress call has become a key focal point for investigators and online researchers alike. According to the group, the incoming water forced a quick departure back to Ocean Springs. But when that vessel returned to the mainland marina, Nolan Wells was not on board.
The story is what happened to Nolan Wells. Somebody knows something. Somebody saw something. I'm thankful to Reverend Al Sharpton and Mr. Tyler Perry and Terrell Owens and Byron Allen putting up these rewards. I understand others have now put up rewards, and that's good because that means we all have the same objective. We want the truth about what happened to Nolan Wells, and it is urgent. It is urgent because each day that goes by, you worry, will we ever get to the truth? And so that's why we want to thank CBC for calling on the federal authorities and anybody else who has resources to help this family get to the truth of what happened to their son.
Standard maritime practice requires an immediate head count before leaving a remote barrier island, especially during an emergency tow. Yet Nolan was left on an island with no ferry service, no public facilities, and no way to cross 10 miles of open water. Even more concerning, when the boat reached the harbor, Nolan's truck was still parked at the marina, and the keys were not with Nolan. They were in the hands of the people who returned without him. By the morning of July 5th, Nolan Wells had not returned home, and his phone went straight to voicemail. His parents, Christine and Elmore, immediately went to trace his steps back to the marina where he had departed the day before. When they arrived at the harbor, Nolan's truck was still in the parking lot, but Nolan was nowhere to be found. As the family began contacting the people who had traveled with him to Horn Island, they made a critical discovery. Nolan's personal belongings and the keys to his vehicle were in the possession of the friends who had returned across the Sound on July 4th. For any parent, this immediately set off alarm bells. Why would an 18-year-old hand over his vehicle keys, leave his phone behind, and remain stranded on a remote barrier island 10 miles offshore without a ride home? Desperate for answers, Nolan's father went directly to the residence of one of the friends to find out what had happened on the island. During the Atlanta press conference, reporters specifically pressed Nolan's father about that encounter, asking about claims that conversations during that initial search allegedly referred to Nolan in the past tense, even though his body had not yet been discovered. Elmore Wells's response captured the pure instinct and agony of a father searching for his missing child.
Put yourself in a father's shoes. And you just found out that your child is missing. The only thing you want to know is where he is. Trying to go back and think about specific words at that moment, I wasn't thinking about that. My mind and my focus was finding my whereabouts of my son.
On July 6th, the worst fears of the Wells family were confirmed. Nolan's body was located on Horn Island. But what stunned civil rights attorneys and independent observers was how quickly the initial official narrative was formed. Within 24 hours of recovery, local statements indicated no initial suspicion of foul play. How could a death investigation be characterized as having no foul play before independent toxicology was returned, before digital forensics on personal devices were executed, and while major timeline contradictions remained wide open? That rush to judgment set off a high-stakes battle over the digital evidence and a closed-door standoff over Nolan's unopened phone. In modern death investigations, a smartphone is often the most vital eyewitness available. A complete digital extraction can reveal precise GPS location telemetry, step and motion data to determine physical activity, unedited text messages, and exact timestamps of when calls were initiated or received. In the investigation into Nolan Wells' death, his mobile device could provide the definitive answers. Did he try to contact someone for a ride? Where was he moving between 3 and 4 p.m. on Horn Island? And what communication took place between everyone involved? But obtaining that data requires a strict legal protocol known as a digital chain of custody, a protocol that became the center of a closed-door legal standoff. On July 15th, the family and legal team met directly with the Jackson County District Attorney's Office. To ensure complete transparency and prevent claims of evidence tampering, an agreement was reached. Both sides would participate in a single joint forensic examination. The phone would be downloaded and analyzed just once, with forensic specialists from both the state, the defense, and potentially federal investigators present in the room together. But weeks after that meeting, the defense team revealed a major roadblock. They were still waiting for the district attorney's office to set the date.
So just to clarify, what the agreement was that the DA's office, and this is the Jackson County DA's office, as well as our forensic team, and possibly the FBI, were going to together download and examine the phone. So it's done one time with everybody together, right? This is very common in the law. And what you all may be more used to is when there's a terrible car accident, and then there's an examination of that car, and everybody comes together one time. They don't move that car around, and everybody does their own thing. This is what is supposed to happen. We are waiting for the DA to determine the time, the place, the date. Let us know, and we are going to be there with our forensics team and anybody else, but it's done one time, one examination. We're ready for it to happen.
The cell phone isn't the only critical evidence waiting for complete access. Renowned forensic pathologist Dr. Roger Mitchell was retained by the family to conduct an independent autopsy review, specifically to analyze physical findings, including questions raised regarding tissue discoloration. Yet that review also relies on full cooperation and evidence sharing from local authorities. But as the family's attorneys pushed for access to the physical and digital evidence, an entirely new battle erupted outside the courtroom, a coordinated effort to silence the questions being asked. As weeks passed without official answers, a fierce narrative war ignited across social media. Public interviews and commentary began circulating, with accounts defending the friends and describing the 4th of July events as a tragic, chaotic misunderstanding. But online researchers and the public continued to point out the unresolved contradictions: the 4 p.m. Sea Tau distress call, the 10-mile ocean barrier, and how personal property returned to the mainland without Nolan. As scrutiny intensified, the pushback shifted from internet debate into real-world legal pressure. Rather than addressing the factual discrepancies, an aggressive legal strategy began targeting those asking questions. Independent journalists, content creators, and commentators tracking the case were met with formal cease and desist warnings and threats of defamation lawsuits. Even more alarming was the targeted harassment directed at Nolan's grieving family. In the midst of planning their son's memorial, an anonymous complaint was filed against Nolan's mother, Christine Wansley, attempting to jeopardize her professional nursing license. At the Atlanta press briefing, attorney Ben Crump directly addressed these intimidation tactics, drawing a hard line on the right to examine public evidence.
We defend the First Amendment rights of content creators reporting on Nolan Wells' case. We stand with content creators, independent journalists, and citizens who are responsibly reporting on the Nolan Wells case and asking legitimate questions in pursuit of truth and accountability. The First Amendment protects robust public discussion on matters of public concern, and those protections are not reserved just for traditional media. We are deeply concerned when cease and desist letters, threatened lawsuits, or other legal pressure become tools to intimidate or silence lawful scrutiny. There is an important difference between knowingly spreading false information and asking questions, examining evidence, identifying inconsistencies, expressing opinions, and demanding transparency.
While local actors attempted to shut down public discussion with legal threats, the legal team was preparing a countermeasure that local authorities could not silence. They uncovered a critical legal reality about Horn Island itself, a jurisdictional fact that officially brought the United States Congress and the FBI into the fight. For weeks, the debate around Nolan Wells was treated as a county-level matter, but legally, that assumption fell apart the moment you look at the map. Horn Island is not owned by Jackson County, nor is it managed by the state of Mississippi. It is a federally protected barrier island under the administration of the National Park Service. That single jurisdictional detail changes everything. Under federal law, unexplained deaths occurring on federal land fall directly under the investigative scope and oversight of the federal government. At the press briefing, legal observers pointed out a glaring contradiction. When minor property crimes occur on federal parkland in Washington, D.C., federal agencies mobilize immediately with grand juries and arrests. Yet on Horn Island, where an 18-year-old lost his life on federal soil, federal authorities had not initiated an on-site inquiry. To force accountability, federal lawmakers stepped in. Representative Lucy McBath, the second vice chair of the Congressional Black Caucus and a member of the House Judiciary Committee, confirmed that a formal congressional letter has been executed and delivered directly to federal law enforcement leadership. The demand was clear: a full, objective federal investigation by the Department of Justice and the FBI to uncover what happened to Nolan Wells. And as legal team members clarified during the briefing, federal authorities have been given an expected 7-day window to respond.
As a member of the Congressional Black Caucus, I'm the second vice chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. We are demanding a full federal investigation. Kash Patel, we're demanding a full federal investigation as to what has actually happened to Nolan Wells. We want to make sure that every stone is unturned because his life matters. All of our children's and our families' lives matter. And we must fight back. We must stand up and we must demand accountability for this family's loss. We cannot turn a blind eye to what continues to happen again and again and again. That's the reason why I ran for Congress, to make sure that we continue to put a face on what's happening to our families and our communities every single day. We must say Nolan's name. Amen. Say his name. Lift his name. And as the national Black journalists of this country, you have the ability to be able to lift this story and not let it die. We see over and over again these kinds of tragedies in our communities that continue to happen. And they make it to CNN. They make it to MSN Now. They make it to our local news for maybe 30 days, if that. And then the stories are gone, and the carnage is left with the families and the communities that have lost someone that they love. So I thank the National Black Journalists. Thank you for lifting this family story. Do not let it die. Continue to say his name. Continue to tell his story, because they deserve justice, and it matters. It mattered for me. It mattered for Trayvon. It mattered for Eric Brown. It matters for all of our loved ones that we have lost.
With federal lawmakers formally involved, the investigation can no longer remain contained behind local doors. Through the House Judiciary Committee, Congress possesses direct subpoena and oversight power over federal agencies. If local authorities refuse to release evidence or continue to stall the joint phone extraction, federal oversight can compel transparency. But as the legal clock ticks on the federal government's response, Nolan's family is facing a deeply personal milestone that underscores why this fight matters. Beyond the jurisdictional battles, the legal filings, and the digital forensics, there is a reality that cannot be lost in the legal noise. Nolan Wells was an 18-year-old on the cusp of adulthood, with his whole life and athletic career ahead of him. On August 19th, Nolan would have celebrated his 19th birthday. Instead of celebrating a milestone with their son, his parents are preparing for a national day of prayer and a vigil in Ocean Springs, Mississippi. At the podium in Atlanta, Nolan's mother, Christine, put into words the profound void left behind and the simple answer they are fighting for.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for having us, for platforming our son's story. As many of you know, his 19th birthday is next Wednesday. And it's, as the days gets closer, it's definitely getting harder that realization is really sinking in. That we don't have our son physically here anymore. And I think a lot of people have forgotten. Only thing we want to know is what happened. That's all we want to know, is what happened to our son. Because many parents out there, you still have your children. You still can hug them. You still can call them. You still can celebrate their life with them. And we do not have that anymore. Our lives have forever changed. This new normal is something I would never wish on anyone, not even my worst enemy. The hurt that we feel daily, the conversations that we have to have, not just with each other, but also with our other children as they are grieving as well. So we ask that everyone, please, next Wednesday, join us in prayer. As for us as a family, but also too for everyone out there, but especially for Nolan and the process that we're going through. And again, we thank you so much.
As this case enters its most critical phase, 4 major developments will determine where this investigation goes. First, the formal response from the Department of Justice and the FBI following the 7-day window set by the Congressional Black Caucus. Second, whether the Jackson County District Attorney finally sets the date to execute the single joint forensic download of Nolan's cell phone alongside defense specialists. Third, the independent findings from renowned forensic pathologist Dr. Roger Mitchell once state tissue samples are reviewed. And fourth, the upcoming August 19th vigil in Ocean Springs and the March on Washington on August 28th, keeping national attention locked on this case. When an 18-year-old vanishes 10 miles offshore, leaving his keys on the mainland, the truth cannot be left behind on that island. What do you think about Congress forcing the FBI to step in, and why do you think local authorities have delayed the joint extraction of Nolan's phone? Drop your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Make sure to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update as the federal deadline approaches. Next is the full press conference that was held.